I think it's playing small. I think I was comfortable in doing something that was, and there's nothing wrong with doing something local. I think some of the best impacts are local, but it was, I would say, below the skill level that I had at the time. And I think a lot of it is you go through so many times of building your confidence in this way or that way, and you are faced with the challenge over and over again. Okay, are you going to really be about this? Are you just going to talk about how you're going to do big things, or are you going to do it? And I had a friend that had mentioned about this opportunity to do national research, and I don't know, I just thought, like, I don't know if that's for me. And I think underneath that, the subtext is, I don't know if I can, right? And even though I project a lot of confidence, and I am confident, there is always that little voice in the back of my head that will say, I don't know if I can, right? And I think sometimes we need people like yourself to call that the better part of ourselves out of us, so that we can do that better work.
Hey, Uncommon Leaders, welcome back. This is the Uncommon Leader Podcast, and I'm your host, John Gallagher. Well, today's a personal episode for me. In these interviews, we often talk about the frameworks of leadership and coaching, but today we get to look ultimately at the fruit of those frameworks through the story of a friend of mine and a current Growing Champions client. His name is Sean McCrorie. What a great Irish name. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. Sean's journey is a masterclass, though, in what happens when you make the decision to better yourself so you can better inspire and encourage others. Inspired by a powerful lesson from his stepfather that I hope he'll share with us, Sean has moved from a high-impact youth work in his local community to helping lead some national research aimed at reducing substance-related harm and saving lives across the country. Now, this is the first time Sean's sharing his story publicly, and we're going to dive deep into the growth that we've seen over the last few years and how he lives out his mission of helping at least one person breathe easier every day. So Sean McCrorie, welcome to the Uncommon Leader Podcast. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you, John. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, and I'm excited about our conversation. You know the gig because you're a regular listener of the podcast. I'm glad you had a chance to be a guest here. But I'm going to ask you to tell me a story from your childhood that still impacts who you are today as a person or as a leader.
Sure. So I think the story that I would go with is, I'll take you back to when I was 6 years old. So I had lost my biological father through some complications he had with diabetes, and I'm an internalizer. So my way of managing that as a 6-year-old, like, I don't have the words to express I'm sad or I'm frustrated or I'm scared. And as a lot of people might do if they internalize, you might use food to kind of regulate your emotions. So that's sort of what I fell into. And then I had gone up to I think I was about 260 pounds by the time I got to high school. And you talked about decision in the intro, making a decision. And one day, I can't tell you anything specific that happened, but I just remember one day walking by a mirror in my house, and I just said, I want to change this. And at that time, that was the early 2000s, and the internet was just starting to get off the ground, and fitness professionals were starting to come online. So I just Googled how to lose weight. And I think the first article came up was a fitness professional named Tom Venuto. And Tom Venuto had written a series of articles about here's how you eat, here's how you exercise. And what really got to me was the goal setting. And this is sort of the door of how I got to work with somebody like yourself, is understanding the power of setting goals, SMART goals, or if I can say, I think you say SMART. I don't have the Boston accent, but yep, I know you like SMART goals. And so I would set these goals with specific outcome goals, and then I would set process goals. So, okay, how are you going to do that? Because I can't just say, okay, I want 30 pounds of fat to come off my body, right? That's an outcome goal, but what's the process? Okay, well, how many times do I have to exercise? What do I have to do in the gym? What do I have to eat in the morning? How do I have to prepare my day so that I have time to manage, at the time, schoolwork or a part-time job? And you start learning all of these different ways that it's not just a fitness goal. It's not just something that you would do in that realm. You can take that and it could be portable to your career, to school, your relationship goals. And then I decided, okay, let's continue on with this. And it was always sort of like a side project to me. And it was starting to give me confidence. I could talk to people in a different way than I used to be able to talk. I could have faith in myself that I could take on a new opportunity and accomplish it. Because if I could lose this amount of fat in the gym and with all those disciplines, then what else could I do? And then I think that the byproduct of that, of what happens so many times when you initially go into something for one thing, you come out with something completely different. And I had landed a lot of mentors, people like Tom Venuto, people like Dr. John Berardi, which I'll bring up because that's how I ended up meeting you. Is Dr. John Berardi was on a podcast with Jeremy Scott, and I think you were a client of his at one point, and you were on his podcast. And I thought, I had just graduated from my master's program. I had done a placement with the Reach Out Center for Kids. You talked about the local community mental health center I worked with, and I thought, I want to take this to the next level, and I'm not sure how. So the thing that I usually do in those moments is I reach out to somebody. So you just seemed like the person. I didn't evaluate. It was more of a gut decision to contact you. And then we had our initial meeting. We set up. I did another 2 years, I think, at the Reach Out Center for Kids. And then I had the opportunity to go and do that national research you were talking about. So I'll stop there. And if there's anything you want to dive into.
No, Sean, I love that as a story. So many different things. First, thank you for sharing about your childhood story and how that impacts. And I know there are, just deeper things inside of that we've learned along our journey on the coaching side. And I was smiling because I appreciate how you shared the way that we got introduced. And frankly, I believe how God intervenes in many things like this. You followed a guy, Berardi. He's on Jeremy Scott. You're listening to Jeremy Scott Fitness Podcast in Scottsdale, Arizona, as an Irish Canadian, ultimately leading you to hearing me on that podcast. And as you say, connecting through a gut feel. What I love about that is, again, is part of that journey. While it feels serendipitous, I believe that story was always written. But what I truly love in terms of what you say is that you've, inside of the journey you have, when you face a challenge, you look for someone else who's in a space that might be ahead to help you get through that, whether it's a coach on the fitness side or it's a coach on the business development or a leadership development side, or even some of the other things that we've talked about with regards to your hobbies. You're curious and you reach out to individuals, and I'm glad you did. And I know that, as we've walked together, it's been quite a journey the last few years. Now, I'm curious about the part that, what was the gap that you had identified in yourself that said, I need to think about talking to an executive coach as to where you were on your journey?
I think it's playing small. I think I was comfortable in doing something that was, and there's nothing wrong with doing something local. I think some of the best impacts are local, but it was, I would say, below the skill level that I had at the time. And I think a lot of it is you go through so many times of building your confidence in this way or that way. And you are faced with the challenge over and over again. Okay, are you going to really be about this? Are you just going to talk about how you're going to do big things, or are you going to do it? And I had a friend that had mentioned about this opportunity to do national research. And I don't know. I just thought, I don't know if that's for me. And I think underneath that, the subtext is, I don't know if I can, right? And even though I project a lot of confidence and I am confident, there is always that little voice in the back of my head that will say, I don't know if I can, right? And I think sometimes we need people like yourself to call that the better part of ourselves out of us so that we can do that better work. And what it does is it ends up putting you into contact. I had excellent mentors at the Public Health Agency of Canada to grow my research skills, to grow my communication skills, to grow my scientific skills. And it's also a chance for me to take what I would say is my strongest leadership, my coaching ability, my ability to lead with kindness, and practice that in every day in instances where you would think that those things are regular occurrences, but they're not. So a kind word that you write, I'm very intentional with the words that I write. It really stands out and makes somebody's day. And then it makes you feel better. And it makes you understand, you can have an impact on this. It doesn't matter if you're in a very kind of academic scene or a very this seems bigger than I am. You can still kind of bring yourself to the job. And I think I needed to know that because so much of what I've done has been separated between there's academic Sean that's done these degrees, and then there's the Sean that lost that weight and continued on this fitness journey, and never the two shall meet, sort of thing.
Both things that are huge to overcome, right? And then there's the mindset component. I smiled when you said the inner critic as well. I just spoke with someone yesterday on the podcast who referred to that inner critic as the what if whisperer. What if this happens bad? Because it's normally not good stuff, that inner critic that sits inside of us. And we know that if it's not good things, again, back to the faith side, that it's not God talking to us as well, that he recognizes the greatness in us. And I think that when we can recognize as individuals that we are at a place that we haven't realized our potential, I think that's really cool. Now, you recognize this earlier than many folks do. A couple of things that I would say, I want you to talk to the person listening who may not believe that investing in themselves is the right thing to do. That it's it's too expensive to do coaching. Or the other might be, it takes too much time to do coaching, and people feel guilty when they take the time either out of their busy day to do personal development. What are the thoughts that, kind of led you to overcome that and reach out and say, I'm going to invest in myself?
Yeah, I think there's a tendency for all of us to look at the dollar value of a coaching service or a product that we're buying and then think, I got to buy this, and is it going to work, and how much work do I have to put in? And of course, nothing really works unless you do the work. That is definitely true. But I think sometimes for me, when I've made those decisions, I've had to step back and saying, I'm buying the result. Right. So if I buy a fitness product back in the day, I was buying a book, and I wasn't just buying a book to read it. I was buying fat loss is what I was really buying. And then as a consequence of that, so like the work with you, I was buying, okay, I feel stuck. I'm in this current situation. I don't know how to get to the next level, but I bet you there's somebody I know. So I'm buying the next level for myself. I'm buying the dream that I have for myself. I think I'm very much about SMART goals, and I'm very much about kind of getting all detailed about the process. But sometimes when things are foggy, you kind of just need somebody that can kind of help you understand what the next side looks like. So it's like, what does your perfect life look like? What does your perfect day look like? What are the details? Who's in that day? What do you do in that day? And you realize that's actually what you're buying, is you're buying a service that's going to bring you to that perfect day, or at least move you towards that. And you'll have to course correct along the way. And if you buy coaching services like Growing Champions, you'll have somebody help you do that course correction. So that's the way I tend to look at it, because I guess I'm still relatively young, but I get concerned sometimes that all these big visions I have in my head, that if I don't make those decisions to buy a service to take me to the next level, it's probably 50 years are going to pass, 30 years are going to pass. And it's like, oh, I didn't do it. And I think that scares me more than whatever, the little bit of money I might have to put on the line.
No, I love that, buying the outcome. And again, you are not just relatively young, you are young and still have a lot of years on your journey, God willing, to succeed. And you're starting to put many of those things in place, whether it's, again, the fitness side and staying there, the faith side in terms of your development as well, or this mindset side with regards to, the outcome that you're looking for and always striving for something, continuous improvement. Now, that drive sometimes to others can come as there are areas of your life that may get out of balance. So, you and I talked a lot of times before about certainly your desire to be not just a great leader and a successful business person, but also a great spouse, a great friend, and maybe even one day a great father as well, a great parent. How have you learned to balance those things out, Sean? Your personal development, we'll call it ambition, in your own career with the needs of your family and friends.
I think this is a concern because, especially in the personal development space, like if you go and watch motivational videos, it's always about all the work that you have to do, all the sacrifices you have to make. And I remember expressing that to you because going back to that story I told you at the opening of the podcast about losing my father. My father was very overweight and he had a lot of health complications, which eventually led to his death. And I think I've been very, very concerned that if I don't take care of my health and I get out of balance, same thing might happen to me. And now that I'm a husband, I think about it even more that I would be leaving a wife behind. And if I'm a father one day, I'll be leaving kids behind. And I think I expressed that to you sometime during our coaching journey. And you said, well, maybe that's the way some people do it, but how can an uncommon leader create balance in their life, right? Speaking of Dr. John Berardi at the opening, kind of the way we met, is I always saw him as an uncommon leader because here's a guy that built a business on about things that he loved. He built a health and fitness, specifically a nutrition business. He was able to keep himself in phenomenal shape. He was able to be a father of 4 kids and a husband. And he would do things that were kind of uncommon at the time. He would do things like when kind of the mentors of my mentors, if you were in fitness in the early 2000s and 90s, you travel around the world. So you'd be on the road, most of the time. Maybe you're in Australia one week and the next week you're in Europe. And Dr. John Berardi said, I'm not that guy. I'm very introverted. If I go to those conferences, it really, really drains me. And it's just not how I feel I want to do things. But with the advent of technology, I think it would have been maybe Skype back then. I don't think Skype exists anymore. He was able to attend conferences virtually. So he could give a talk sort of virtually to a crowd if he couldn't be there in person. And then that would allow him to spend time with his kids or his wife and not kind of disrupt his day. As you know, I'm sure you've had many challenges traveling because I know you travel a lot for your job and trying to stay on your fitness routine or get the proper food. And does your hotel have a kitchenette that you could cook it? Or do you have to make a better choice at a restaurant around your hotel? And I thought, I think that's the life that I want. And I think maybe subconsciously when I said there was a gut feel about what, why did I reach out to John? I think it's the uncommon leader. I was like, that's what I want to be. And I think when I say being in balance, like, I'm sure there will be weeks, and there have been weeks where, yes, I'll be working too much, or maybe I'm relaxing a little too much and I'm not, I'm okay. Well, you're spending time with the family, but you're not doing, the other disciplines that you should do. I think it's just, if you think of like a handstand, somebody that's doing a handstand is never like perfect balance. There's constantly little micro shifts and how they balance, right? And that's how I think of balance, is that, okay, you go a little bit too far to this side, but then you pull yourself back through reflection, or having a coach like somebody like yourself to say, Sean, I think it's great you're doing this, and here's what I'm seeing about this area that maybe we need to focus on those disciplines more. So it's a constant balancing act, but it's also make sure that the life you're creating for yourself is the life you want. I remember I wanted to be a doctor really bad, and I remember going to a doctor's clinic who was doing obesity management, and he had so many clinics, and he ended up being late for our meeting because he had gone to the wrong clinic because he had so many things on his mind. And I thought at the time, just because I just had the will that I was like, I'll make it work, I wasn't seeing the evidence in front of me saying like, well, if this guy's a very intelligent man and he's got a very successful business and he's feeling the pressure and the stresses, right? Why do I think I would be any different if I try to replicate exactly what he's doing? And then I think it's finding people like yourself that maybe there is a way to do it, or maybe there's a way to do what he was doing, but do it from a different angle. You don't have to be a medical doctor. So I think, because I'm very rigid, and I think a lot of people that probably are very goal-oriented can be very rigid. You set a goal and you're just going to make it happen. And the idea of pivoting sometimes feels like failure, or feels like, oh, I'm quitting. But sometimes you kind of have to pivot and you'll land on something that was better. Like working with you and working at the Public Health Agency of Canada was probably always a better lifestyle fit for me than being a frontline physician.
Are you tired of being tired? I know I was. That's when I was glad to find Own It Coaching. Now my resting heart rate's down 20%, sleep quality up 300%. I just ran my first Spartan race at age 56. I feel better than I ever have. So if you're ready to stop settling and start owning your own health, go to coachjohngallagher.com/own it and set up a free call with the Own It coaching team. That's coachjohngallagher.com/own it. Now, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, again, there's so many pieces of that balance component and you already referenced the 6 F's in terms of family and faith and finances that we've talked our way through and assessed those, and continuously. And what I love is that you're continuously assessing those and reflecting. The other side of that, self-care, and it's something that's very close to your work, social work and research in the space that you're doing it, can be emotionally difficult for you as well. What's a routine for you that helps you to protect your own mental health? The process of looking for that next opportunity for you. How are you staying in a positive mindset? What's a routine that you do that keeps you going? Not just your weight, not just your personal development and leadership skills, but also your emotional health as well.
Yeah, so I think one of the big decisions I made in the last few years, and I was afforded the opportunity because working for the Public Health Agency of Canada, we had access to benefits that I could go to a clinical psychologist and work through some of the trauma I had around losing close family members. And I think I made that decision a couple years ago. I had gone to counselors before thinking, okay, well, this isn't really going to do anything. But if you work the process and you show up, once a week or whatever it is that you decide to do, whatever the cadence is that you have, things will start unlocking through the therapy. Because if you have to have faith and you have to trust in the process that this person that you've chosen to help you has the skills, and you might not see it right now, but if you do the work, the results will come. And some of my work was, I've lost people to suicide. So doing work on suicide was, I think to me that it was having the impact on me that it was. You would spend maybe 8 hours of your day reading about suicide research. Right. And I thought, well, I feel like I'm mentally, like I boxed that a certain way and I can do it. And I did do it and I did it well. But when I was afforded the opportunity to switch the angle of the research I was doing where it wasn't so focused on suicide, I realized, oh, it's like taking a weight off my shoulders. Like I'm still doing work to help people. It's just from a different angle. And it's actually kind of better for me. Because I think there's something that happens when you go through trauma where you think, okay, what are the important books for me? And I had read it, I think maybe before my brother passed, but certainly at the time he passed. I've read it multiple times since then. Maybe you've read A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It was trying to find meaning in suffering. Part of the thesis was suffering is not meaningful in itself. You have to find the meaning. So when my brother passed, it became, I'm going to help other families and other youth not have to go through what I'm going through. And that is a very admirable goal, and I still feel a pull towards it. But before working with this counselor, it was, I'm doing this to resolve my grief. I'm doing this to solve myself. And it shifted from, I don't think I need to do that anymore. And to answer your question more specifically about the practice I do, I can go to counseling. I can I can, sort of, a cat's in front of here. I can go to counseling, and I can meditate. I can go into prayer. I can talk with somebody like yourself. I could talk with my wife. I can read poetry, and understand that if I feel bad today, that's okay. That's a range of human emotions. I mean, when I worked at the Reach Out Center for Kids, we would often teach kids, you'd associate the emotion with the zone. So like, yellow might be the happy zone or something. And always trying to get them to the yellow zone, it's doing a disservice, right? That there's no power in feeling sad or feeling angry. It's how do you manage those emotions when you're in it? And how do you not do damage when you're in those states, right? So that you can come back to a state where you're more calm. So meditation is one way of doing that. Prayer is one way of doing that. Counseling is another way. Reflecting with some people like yourself, or just reflecting in a journal. So I always try to find those little moments of pause in the day where I can kind of let whatever's working in my subconscious mind or beneath the surface kind of work itself to my conscious and just kind of observe it. And you don't have to attach to it, right? I mean, that's part of the meditation practice, right? You just kind of let it go and let it come. And then it will fade away. You can just watch a coach that I have for precision nutrition, Krista Scott Dixon, who I've talked about with you multiple times. She used to call that urge surfing. It's just letting the feeling come and then watch it fall away. And sometimes it's really hard because those feelings, you just want to do something to distract yourself. But I found that's sort of what, especially when I'm sort of in the eye of the storm now trying to figure out what's next, that is what's kept me grounded. And that's what keeps me moving forward. And it's about managing that state, because there are days I wake up and I'm like, I don't know why I'm in this again. I've worked so hard. I had so many good things, but things are outside of your control. And I know we're going all over the place here, but I just want to add this piece because this is something that you really helped me with when I worked, is that F, faith, one of the 6 Fs. I grew up Roman Catholic and I went to church, but I really wasn't understanding faith until I started working with you and developing a relationship about it. And when I say like being able to let go and let God, kind of, that didn't really work for me. And this is something that I've worked on the last few years that I've known you, and has really helped me in this last year of challenge and struggle and trying to figure out what's next. And I think there's an investor, one of my like little side things that I like to do is I like to follow finance and investing. And there's an investor named William Green. He wrote a book called Richer, Wiser, Happier. And now he does a podcast under the same name. And he says there's moments in your life where you feel like everything's going right. And it's like God's just carrying you through everything and everything's a yes. And then there's moments like what I'm in now where it feels like God's kind of like a parent, like you're a parent and you remember when your kids were small and you let go of their hand and they're learning to walk, but you're right there to catch them and make sure that they're okay, but they have to start walking on their own. And he said there's moments like that where it feels like that's what God's doing, as like a caring parent lets go of your hand and lets you walk, and you stumble and it's uncomfortable. And that's sort of the period I am in. And William Green said it's not about being in those periods and stumbling and falling. It's about how you behave when you're in those periods. How is your character? Are you still practicing kindness? Are you still practicing love in your relationships? Are you being a loving person? Or are you letting yourself kind of harden and become bitter? Sort of, I think one of the first podcasts I watched or listened to was the one you did with your wife, and you talked about the egg in the water and the coffee. I think it was called the coffee bean or something like that.
The coffee bean, right? Absolutely.
Yes. And it's like, are you going to let yourself be hardened by the environment you currently find yourself in, or soften that you give up? Right? Or can you be coffee and transform the environment around you? So I think for me, that's a lot of what I'm doing today. Is I'm doing something that I was very scared to do, is tell my story publicly. I have so much shame around it, as a lot of people that have trauma in their past do. Like, you kind of feel safe if you don't tell people. And I thought, yeah, but you can't affect people's lives if you keep it to yourself. So can I come on a podcast like this? And even if it's one person that listens to this, maybe there's some value in it, they get it, and that makes them go another day, or makes them say, you know what, I want to transform this aspect of my life. And that sort of has become the thesis for my career, is how can I do that? So I can do that as a social worker at the Reach Out Center for Kids. I can also do that as a researcher at the Public Health Agency of Canada. And I think the thing that I've really wanted to do, that I've mentioned to you, is become an entrepreneur and be a business owner. And I've just been really stuck at, one, I'm scared to put myself out there, but two, I'm just not sure what I would do. Because I've always been interested. This is one of I'll say my challenges. I won't say a weak point, but I like to do everything. And you always say, well, you can't do everything. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. And that is a challenge that I still struggle with today.
Look, I mean, the last 4 minutes are a masterclass in why I enjoy working with Sean on his journey. He's the consummate student, but he also takes what he learns and he applies it as well. He's not just holding it in as knowledge, he's using it as wisdom. And what I mean by that, I heard so many things in that, not focusing on the outcome, with regards to, suicide or, that the topic that was there, but focusing on the process and what are the conversations you can have either with God or with those individuals to have an impact on them. You just said that, if I just could have an impact on one person as a result of this conversation right here, that's exactly why we had the conversation. It's not about here of having millions of listeners or, how many downloads. While those are kind of fun process metrics, it's really about the impact that we try to have. And the third thing that I heard in this, folks, is finding your purpose ultimately through the pain that you've gone through. This is something that I know Sean has grabbed onto in anything that he's gone after, is that while he's trying many things and he's working through many things, his mission has not wavered. And when you're clear on that mission, there's no doubt about it. The fears that you come into with regards to your work and being an introvert and whatever those are, you can overcome those things. So I love the story that is the last few minutes of that conversation. To your point, whether it was on many things or not, that's what it was. But there are nuggets in each one of those things that you said. You mentioned you're not really selling anything yet as a business, right? What is the one truth, though, that you hope sticks to someone listening who feels stuck in their current role? Like, what is the one thing you want them to hear? It's not the billboard question. This is just like, as you've gone down through this journey, what's the one truth you want them to hear?
Yeah, and I suppose you're always selling yourself. I've heard people tell me that. I think the one thing is exactly what I'm doing today is I was so hesitant. John had asked me to do this a couple of years ago now, I think, and I was so hesitant because I was just, and we had talked about that, I think, before the camera started rolling for this podcast, is I felt like if I keep myself away from the public eye, if I stop putting myself out there, I'm safe. Like nobody can kind of hurt me that way. And I had quoted a song to John. I think it's "True love is searching for you, but how will it find you unless you step out into the light?" And I think very much so that in your life, if you're trying to come to a decision and you just can't muster up the courage to do it, it's about finding that one step that will take you a little bit closer and the courage that you need to do that one step. And then maybe the one step. And then the thing that happens with doing that isn't just all of a sudden they've accumulated and you've done this great thing. It's the point is you go a little bit, it's like kind of like crossing a stream. You jump on a rock and then it's like, oh, well, there's another rock, but I couldn't see that from the shoreline. And all of a sudden there's another rock. So those rocks can be people that give you opportunities. It could be opportunities that present themselves in a certain way had you not taken this step. It could be somebody reaches out to you after being on a podcast and you have a conversation and it takes your life in a different direction. And I think sometimes it has to be that you focus on the positive outcome. And it's not positive thinking per se, but it's focusing on what could be. What if it all goes right? What if it all works out? Instead of, oh, well, if I do this, these are all the bad things that are going to happen. Really, had I not taken that step to reach out to John, this podcast doesn't happen. But when I reached out to John, I certainly didn't think I'd ever be on a podcast. And as I said, I was reluctant to come on the podcast. So I think it's just taking that little step. And you probably know what that step is if you get a little bit quiet. You can pray about it if you're inclined to do so, or journal about it, or talk to somebody you really trust. And you'll probably find out what that next step is. And by taking that step and just committing to doing it again and again and again, opportunities present themselves. And for me, I haven't really found another way to do that. That if you don't take the initial step, like nothing really happens. And it's not that I don't think sometimes there's time for kind of relaxing and letting go and letting things happen, but it's usually after you've done a series of actions. And then you let space for things to sort of miracles to happen.
Yeah, I love the analogy of the rocks that you talked about as well. It's like if you take one step out, you may expose one or two more that you didn't see from the shoreline before you got out there. And just taking that first step can open up so many different opportunities. That is so cool. You think about that step you took, end up on the podcast today. We talked about this for a while. Whatever that is, that story's already been written. But let's go back now 3 years, and you give advice to the Sean that you were 3 years ago. What's one thing you'd advise him with regards to the leader that he was trying to become?
I think that you're capable, and I still feel this today. I think when I look back at my younger self is there's always one more course. There's one more book. There's one more mentor I need to talk to before I have the authority to do whatever it is to go and conduct national research or to become a coach or to become a business owner of some sort. There's always one more book, one more podcast that will somehow give me the magical answer. And the thing that, it's not that there's not always something to learn, but I think when you study enough successful people, you start seeing more commonalities than you do differences. And you realize, well, you've already heard this lesson before. But I think sometimes what happens is the teacher appears when the student is ready, that old saying. Sometimes you hear the same thing that you've heard a lot of times, but for whatever reason, it clicks that day. And sometimes I think it's continuing to try, but I would tell my former self or my 3-year-old from 3 years ago you make the decision today and then you see what happens. And if you don't make the decision, if you don't take the action, probably nothing will happen. But you'll probably have more regrets when you get to the end of your life if you hadn't taken that action than you will regretting taking that action. As long as it's aligned with who you are and your values and your core values, as we've talked about.
I think that's so cool. I love that answer as you go through it. Thank you for that, Sean. Hey, listen, let's have the folks learn a little bit more about you. We're going to have some fun and the listeners as well as we go through this. Do a little lightning round. It's not something I always do on the podcast, but it's something that I know helps others learn more about you. So aside from the Uncommon Leader podcast, of course, what's a non-negotiable podcast that you listen to that impacts you on a weekly basis?
I think Rick Rubin's Tetragrammaton. So I'm not sure if you know who Rick Rubin is. He's a music producer. I guess it's been a few years now, but he wrote a book on the creative act, I think it's called. So he talks about the creative process because he's worked with, I know you like country music, so maybe Johnny Cash, you're a fan of his music. So he's produced, I think he produced 6 albums for Johnny Cash.
Wow. Okay.
So I think that one of his famous covers of Hurt, I think it's 9 Inch Nails song, Hurt, that was Rick Rubin that helped Johnny Cash produce that. I think Rusty Cage as well, which was a Soundgarden cover. So kind of taking him in a different direction than I think he had been before. And I think it's something that I need, especially when I am very, very science minded. It's helpful to go to a podcast where it's not that he never has scientists on there, but it's a lot of discussions with musicians and creative people and understanding that every day there's a choice you can make, a creative choice. Rick Rubin often says that if you drive home, you usually have a route that you drive home and it's almost automatic after you've done it for so long. He goes, but maybe one day you decide to take a right where you normally took a left and it takes you in a new direction and you experience something new, or you decide to stop in at a coffee shop and you overhear a conversation that all of a sudden sparks an idea about your business that you were thinking about, but it couldn't come to you, but something they said connected the dots for you. And he argues that everybody is creative because I'm sure you've heard in your people, I can't draw, I'm not an artist, sure. I'm not. Right. And he argues that everybody has that ability. It's just, how do you unlock it? And I feel like listening to him, any podcast I listen to, whether it's yours or it's Rick Rubin's or any of the other ones that I listen to, it's about expanding my mind. So this is another thing to go back to when you ask me, what do I do to sort of keep myself going and not fall into a negative state, is I listen to podcasts they're usually entrepreneurs, of people that make me think bigger, make me think about possibilities. And that's where your focus goes. And that's what grows in your life versus, oh, this is why it's not going to work out. I'm not good enough. I don't have this, so this isn't going to happen. Or I've gotten to this age and it hasn't happened yet, so why will it happen now? It completely shifts your state. And then in that state will allow you to take that action that makes you step on to that rock and then the next rock and the next rock.
Love that. We are what we consume, no doubt about it. And I love that you're looking for that on the creativity side. I did not know Rick Rubin, but as you described that, I'm going to look that up here. What's the book that's influenced you the most in your career?
I think I have to go with Man's Search for Meaning. I've already mentioned it. I think because when you go through, I mentioned I lost my biological father. I lost my brother when I had just graduated from my undergraduate degree. And just before we were working, I lost my stepfather and 3 grandparents. I think if I didn't have the sort of base that Viktor Frankl, for people that don't know, I guess I shouldn't just assume everybody knows what that book is. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist, a Jewish psychiatrist, and he was in concentration camps during World War II. He ended up surviving, and when he came out of it, he had a manuscript that he was able to reconstruct in the concentration camp and keep forward. And he had said many times he wasn't sure why he was doing it, but it kind of kept him going because he thought, what's the probability I'm going to get out of here and be able to publish this? Well, he did. He published this book on Man's Search for Meaning, it's called, and he had constructed a whole psychotherapy modality called logotherapy about meaning being central to sort of human beings' existence. And for me, I'm always trying to create meaning in everything that I do because it pushes me and spurs me to continue forward, because I feel like when you're missing meaning, life doesn't make much sense to me. There's a researcher named Andrew Brown who describes, he's a happiness researcher at Harvard, and he says the macronutrients. So, I know we talk about fitness on this podcast, fats, carbohydrates, and protein. He said the macronutrients of happiness are satisfaction, engagement, and then meaning. And he feels like a lot of people have satisfaction and engagement in things that they do, but there's a dearth of meaning in today's society. I haven't read the book yet, but he's just published a book all about meaning. And I think that's why that book directs me so much, because I have to find meaning in the things that I've had to overcome. And so many times when you're bereaved or something happens to you, your business goes under or something doesn't work out for you. Why me? Why now? Right? And it's up to you. Life is questioning you how to answer the question. How do you find meaning and keep moving forward? And that's the only thing that I've found that's helped me.
All right. I love that. But now you're talking about macros and micros and eating good. What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Tiger Tail ice cream. I don't know if they have it in the States.
I've never heard of Tiger Tail ice cream. So what is Tiger Tail?
It's not orange sherbet, but it's kind of like an orange flavored ice cream, and it has black licorice in it. And the story that it's attached to is...
Come on, chocolate is the best. And you know that. Chocolate peanut butter. You're supposed to.
Chocolate peanut butter is good.
That's what I taught you. Anything over the last 3 years, that licorice in ice cream is awful.
I'll get you some one day when we meet up.
All right. Okay. Best Christmas movie?
I think probably Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase is probably my favorite Christmas movie.
All right. Close. I mean, you're still wrong on that one too, but I'll say Home Alone is definitely the best one ever. The karaoke song you would like to sing the most?
Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond.
Come on now. Now we're getting good. That is definitely one that's close to me, no doubt about it. Especially my West Virginia friends will understand that one completely. Favorite John Gallagher-ism?
Soon is not a time, and some is not a number.
No doubt about it. Fresh in your mind, I hope, right off the Champions Brew. This is so cool. Well, all right, finish this sentence for me. 15 words or less. An uncommon leader is someone who blank.
Commits to the process, aligns with their core values, and helps others.
Dude, you were ready for that one. Like I use that all the time. And helps others. Love that at the very end. Sean, how can folks get in touch with you? They're going to want to learn more about you and get in touch with you.
Yeah, I think the best time is probably to go to my LinkedIn. I think it's Sincerely Sean McCrorie. So if you send me a message on there, and I'm happy to connect. Sincerely Sean McCrorie. I love that. I will put the link in the show notes to that. Sean, this has been a blast. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as you had hope to enjoy the conversation, knowing that it's the first time you've shared your story, and I think you did a fantastic job. I leave you with the same final question that I have for all of my first-time guests, and you never know, we'll work you up to the 5-time guests as things go forward and get you the robe when you're done. But I'm going to give you a billboard. You can put that billboard anywhere you want to. What's the message you're going to put on that billboard, and why do you put it on there? Yep. So I think I'm going to steal it from a poet named David White. And it's going to make a decision today that your future self will thank you for. So my decision today of going on John Gallagher's podcast is, what will my future self thank me for doing this? What will it lead to? Will it be my own business? Will it be a connection that I never would have had I not done it? Or will it just be simply the satisfaction of putting myself out there and challenging myself to grow? John, perfect. You know, I appreciate the journey that you're on. I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to play a small part in that journey. And I look forward to seeing the fruit that will be born with regards to the processes that you're putting in place and helping others and what's going to be seen in your future. So best wishes for you, and I look forward to our next conversation. Thanks, John. Very fun. Hey, Uncommon Leaders, I know you had to love that conversation with Sean. I know that I did, and I'm so encouraged and certainly have a level of pride as well for, again, playing a small part in his journey of development. Folks, he talked about it, making the decision ultimately that we need to continuously improve in our lives. And I hope you heard his passion that he's been carrying that forward with. You probably know someone who needs to hear this message as well. Hey, share this thing out with others. Share it on your platform. That's how we get it into the hands of more and more uncommon leaders just like you. Until next time, go and grow champions.